given?
Yes. And I'm not into a heavy-handed decoding and getting too rational about working with either dreams or tarot cards. I think that we kind of put it in a different gear when we start to interpret, and that's been a mistake even in Jungian psychology with amplification, I think, where there's been this direction of now discussing in the light of day in a very intellectual way the symbolism, the story, the whole dream world in a way that can deaden actually the true mythic level that the dream really operates on. So there's a skillful way of talking about symbols, bringing them into the moment, engaging with them without killing them with over-analysis.
Mm.
That's the key.
Mm. Have you studied anything in regards to the origins of the tarot and where it came from at all?
Well, yeah, but though I don't consider myself a tarot historian like a number of folks that I know, but the thing about tarot origins is very mysterious. No one to date really knows the origin of tarot. We know the first known decks surfaced in the late 14th century in Italy, probably. We have our earliest decks, I think, go back to about 1420.
Mm-hmm.
But who the first designer of the tarot is an open question and a controversy in the tarot world. Myself, in my way of dealing with that is, it's in a way it doesn't really matter because the ultimate designer of the tarot is probably the same vehicle as that which is the ultimate designer of dreams or of the deep imagination. It's coming out of, you might say, the human soul. There may have been a vehicle or an artist or a teacher or someone who channeled that, but it's the deepest levels of it, I think, are innate to the human mind itself and are timeless in that regard.
Mm. And so I know that you, we can talk about this here a little bit later, done your own tarot, of course, based on the number 9, I guess. But generally, before you did this and worked with it, how did you work with it? Did you do readings with tarot, or did you use it primarily for personal studies, or how did you work with it?
Well, absolutely. All of that. I've been a tarot reader for over 30 years. And then as a reader and as a licensed therapist in California, I started to introduce very carefully and sparsely tarot cards into a therapeutic context with clients, sometimes in group therapy, sometimes with patients who were really open to that sort of thing. Not everybody, certainly, and
Sure.
there are some people who are very threatened by tarot because tarot has such a strange kind of history and reputation.
Right.
But the thing that I started working with and really went into the creation of my deck, TNP, or Tarot the Nine Paths, is a technique that's called sand play. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Tell us about that.
Sand play.
I haven't heard about it. Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, it's a really wonderful technique, actually developed by a Swiss analyst under the tutelage of Carl Jung, named Dora Kauf. I guess this was in the 50s or 40s. And sand play therapy is it's really quite interesting. It's an international therapeutic bottom and on the sides. And next to the sandbox, there is bookcases of miniature objects, hundreds, if not thousands of things that you would think are like collectibles, little figurines of virtually every shape and form. And the objects, now I have hundreds and hundreds of them in my travels of collecting little things, from people, animals, symbols, ordinary objects to very profound things. In fact, in a sand play collection that the sand play therapists develop, they're all kind of unique. The symbols that are there on these bookshelves are supposed to symbolically represent everything in the world, everything that has been, and everything that can be. So that kind of includes, it's a big spectrum of stuff, of things. Now, these are little miniatures. So what you do in this process called sand play therapy, particularly in the Jungian sense, is you guide a person or facilitate a person to stand in front of the sandbox and then go to the shelves and then spontaneously create a scene in the box. They can move the sand, they can pour water in it. In the film, The Great Work, that you alluded to earlier, that I'm in with a number of people, a lot of the scenes took place actually in my office in the sandbox.
Yes.
My office, where you saw a lot of the really interesting symbols, and the filmmakers did a really good job of showing how this process comes alive.
Yes.
Now, I'm talking about sand play only to tell you that my deck of tarot, it was all built on sand play scenes that were digitally photographed and then layered and worked with to create a very unique and, I think, engaging kind of tarot card that's never been done before.
Very interesting. And in regards to the sandbox, is that like a symbol for the world or the internal, like the mind, I guess? And in one sense, does the client or the patient in this case get to pick and choose by the figurines? And is it, as you see it, then a message in how they place the figures, where they do it, and in relation to each other and what they choose? Is that right?
Exactly right. So, the way the process should work is the facilitator does nothing but open up the space and invite the client to, with this simple instruction, make a scene in the box, and then it's wherever the person is drawn. You can use as many figures, maybe 20 or 30 of these images, or maybe one or two, and the therapist patiently allows the client to just trust their own intuitive, instinctive nature. They can pour water on the sand, like I said, and they can kind of move it, and then they can go back and forth until they've created something. And it's better, I encourage a client to just trust their feelings here and not to really think it out or try and make something, intentionally. So it usually takes about maybe 10 minutes only.
Mm-hmm.
The person creates this kind of dreamscape, if you will, and then sits down in front of it, and I will diagram it, and then I will, without interpreting it, there's some people that get into this heavy-handed interpretation where they degrade the symbol by reducing it into this means that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. What the Jungian way of working with symbols is a bit different than the Freudian.
Yes.
In that we don't want to degrade it and ultimately